They say the forest knows your name even before you speak it. I had always dreamed of reaching 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel for paranormal exploration. I thought today's video about the strange whispering woods would be the story to get me there. I walked the narrow path with my camera in hand, the towering ancient trees silent around me. My breath was steady and measured as I narrated softly into the microphone, describing each detail to my viewers in a calm, deliberate tone. The sky was overcast, and the hushed woods were almost unnervingly quiet. I hoped this eerie silence and the promise of mystery would resonate with my audience and bring me one step closer to that 1,000 subscriber goal. I paused to adjust the focus on my camera when something strange happened. The distant sounds of birds and rustling leaves abruptly cut out, and the forest seemed to freeze. A faint breeze stirred the branches, and I could have sworn I heard a soft whisper slip through the air. For a moment I felt a tingle of nervousness run down my spine, but I kept my voice steady. "We're deep in the woods now," I murmured softly into the mic. "Everything's completely quiet here." Despite the calm tone I forced, my heart was pounding just a bit harder. As the sun sank lower, the woods took on a deeper shade of blue-gray. I rounded a bend and entered a small clearing where an ancient oak stood, its gnarled roots spreading out like fingers. At the base of the oak lay a weathered wooden sign, the letters worn away by time. I shone my flashlight on the trunk, and the beam caught something moving at the edge of my vision. A small, pale figure, a child, seemed to stand just beyond the clearing in the shadows. I spun around, but no one was there. I smiled weakly at the camera and tried to conceal the shakiness in my voice, but deep down I knew my viewers could hear it. Suddenly the air turned frigid, and my breath bloomed in front of me in the dim light. A voice, so soft I almost didn't hear it, slipped through the silence. "Leave, now." My stomach lurched. I kept the camera focused on the clearing, voice trembling even as I tried to sound calm. "It's just the wind," I whispered to my viewers, though I didn't truly believe it. Deep down I knew I had encountered something beyond explanation. The oak's branches rustled overhead as if in agreement, and I took a cautious step back. I continued along the path, heart still thumping in my ears. After a few steps, I gasped at the sight before me. There in the dusty twilight stood the same small child I had glimpsed near the oak. She wore a simple white dress, and her dark eyes were fixed on me with an expression that felt both sorrowful and pleading. She raised a pale finger to her lips as if to tell me to stay quiet, then pointed behind me, back down the path we had walked. In a whisper barely louder than the breeze, I asked, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" The child nodded and pointed more insistently toward the way I had come. I took a deep breath and nodded back. "All right," I said softly. "Let's go." As I began walking back toward the edge of the clearing, she floated a few feet ahead of me, leading the way out of the woods. The two of us walked in silence, broken only by the sound of my breath and the soft rustle of leaves underfoot. Relief flooded through me, slowly replacing the fear I had felt moments before. By the time we emerged onto the familiar dirt road at the edge of the whispering woods, dawn was just breaking over the horizon. I ended the recording, thanking my viewers for joining me on this journey and softly reminding them that sharing and subscribing would help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. For now, I felt grateful that I had helped a lost spirit find her way home and one step closer to my little goal.
The cabin was empty, but something had definitely been there. I needed a story that would draw people in and help me finally reach 1,000 subscribers on my channel. That's why I decided to spend the night in the old cabin at the edge of Pine Hollow. The sun was dipping behind the hills as I narrated into my camera, "Hey everyone, tonight I'm here in a remote cabin rumored to be haunted." My footsteps echoed on the wooden floor as I set up my equipment. The cabin smelled of dust and pine, and the fireplace was cold and empty. I clicked on the fireplace camera and told my viewers, I want this place to be the best story yet, all the while feeling a quiet anxiety in the back of my mind. The inside was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood. I ran a hand over the old rocking chair by the wall. It was smooth and worn, as if someone had just left it. I spoke softly to the camera. This cabin hasn't seen a soul in years, or so they say. Outside, a crow cawed in the distance, and my head jerked up. But there was nothing unusual visible through the window, just the darkening tree line and an overcast sky. I shrugged and smiled. Anything out of the ordinary I could attribute to the wind. I lit a small lantern and took a seat at a rickety table. My notebook was open with my subscriber count in the corner, just shy of 1,000. Tonight felt important. I began telling stories about the cabin's history, how decades ago a family lived here, then suddenly vanished. I thought about those lost souls and quietly hoped if anything was around, it might enjoy my tribute. They say Oldwood remembers every laugh and every cry, I said gently into the camera. I paused to let the audience take it in. The house was still, but as I spoke about the family's disappearance, the rocking chair gave a soft sway. My heart skipped. I told myself it was impossible, that a chair couldn't move by itself. I fumbled to record the chair on camera, but by the time I pointed the light, it had stopped moving. I opened the cupboard under the counter. The shelf was lined with clean plates. As I ran my fingers along them, a single plate slipped and clattered loudly to the floor. I jumped, dropping the lantern and rushing to pick it up. Calm voice back on, I told my viewers, just a prank of gravity, I guess. My hands were shaking slightly as I rearranged the plates. Once I settled, I took out a tape recorder and began to play an old lullaby that the family daughter had been known to sing. The melody filled the quiet cabin. One moment nothing happened, then I heard, almost a whisper, someone humming along with it. I froze, turning off the music. There, in the corner of the living room, a soft humming continued. It sounded like a child's voice, singing gently. I swallowed hard and whispered, I hear you. My camera's light wavered as I forced myself to stand. The lantern still in my shaking hand, I followed the sound into the next room. In the moonlight, on an old wooden dresser, I saw an old family portrait. The father, mother, and a little girl smiling. Suddenly, the girl in the painting began to hum, matching the melody. Her painted mouth moved up and down slightly. I felt tears in my own eyes. You're here, I said in a near whisper. The humming stopped and the painted figure stared at me. I knelt before the portrait, whispering, I'm sorry you were alone. The room was suddenly still again. The temperature felt warm, comforting, as if the atmosphere had changed. I stood and faced the camera, voice gentle. I'm giving this family's story the voice it deserves, I said. My heart felt heavy but peaceful at the same time. I finished my recording as dawn broke outside. I thanked my viewers for listening and reminded them with a smile that subscribing would help me reach my 1,000 subscriber goal. Before I left, I placed a fresh rose by the portrait as a thank you to the family I felt close to now. Walking out the door, I glanced back at the cabin and thought maybe some stories needed a kind voice to remember them. I felt closer than ever to my subscribers now, feeling like one of them, part of something bigger. Midnight struck again and again, but the date never changed. I was chasing 1,000 subscribers on my channel, and then I found myself reliving the same midnight over and over. Each time I clicked record, the clock on my dashboard radio loudly chimed midnight. My eyes darted to the calendar, December 3rd again. I took a deep breath and whispered to the camera, "Welcome back to another story. I promise something strange is happening." The room was dim except for the glow of the clock. I had lost count of how many midnights I had seen since this started. Outside my window, the world outside never changed either. The street lights flickered in the same pattern. The night was always still. On the first loop I had woken up drenched in sweat with a scream ready on my lips. But as the loops continued, I learned to stay calm, even when the clock reset. I told myself it was an opportunity to make the perfect horror story for my channel. Each night, I tried something new, different ghosts in the mirror, whispering voices, faint footsteps. The first few times I was terrified. On the 20th time, I was exhausted but determined. I convinced myself I was testing a new immersive format. After all, my subscribers would get a kick out of a time loop style video. For the next 7 midnights, I placed little sticky notes around my apartment, trying to leave messages for myself or find clues. One note said, "Why are you stuck?" But the next morning it was gone or replaced with a drawing of an hourglass. Each day, nothing changed and I would wait again for the second midnight. On one loop, I found my unlocked phone had new videos I hadn't recorded. In those clips, I saw my own reflection behind me, smiling. That was chilling, but I didn't take my eyes off the camera. I managed to calm, "Okay, that's unexpected," into the lens, heart hammering. Over and over, I memorized routines. I placed objects in the kitchen at 11:59 and 30 seconds p.m., a glass of water, some pills, a book. But as midnight struck, the water glass shattered into little stars on the floor before I could even blink. My hands would stop shaking just as the shards appeared. Then, the date would still be December 3rd at 12 hours and I'd blink awake in bed again. I realized I had to break something different to see if anything changed. Perhaps if I stopped recording, the loop would break. Tonight, I sat calmly in my chair, hand over my book. I said to the camera with a flat voice, "Maybe if I go without my camera, something will change." I placed the camera on the table and turned it off. Midnight struck with its familiar tone and I found myself back in bed at 11:58 p.m. The camera was still off. I felt a wave of relief. It worked. Suddenly I could move freely in the loop again. I jumped up, grabbed my camera, and began to record everything as I hurried out of my apartment. I kept recording as I ran down the empty street. The night air was cold on my skin, but the clock on my phone showed 12:05 a.m. The loops had finally ended. I looked back at the building, still as dark and quiet as any other night. I ended the video, slightly out of breath, saying, "I don't know how or why, but I'm free now." And this mystery is going to help me reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone. With a shaky smile, I thanked the unseen friends, my future audience, and realized I could finally stop reliving the same midnight. I saw myself blink from the corner of the mirror when I hadn't. I needed an upload to push me to 1,000 subscribers, and what better story than an abandoned antique shop with a rumored cursed mirror? I walked into the dusty store and pointed my camera at a large oval mirror leaning against the wall. "Tonight's special, guys," I said gently. "We're exploring this haunted antique shop." The mirror's glass was fogged, but as I wiped it clean, my reflection smiled back. I greeted the camera with a steady voice. "This mirror was said to show more than just your reflection. Let's find out." The shop was dark except for the light of my flashlight. I felt a chill as I backed away, the camera trained on the mirror. In the reflection behind me, I thought I saw movement, like someone standing there. I spun around, but the aisle was empty. Calmly, I turned back to the mirror. My reflection's smile had faded. I waved a hand in front of the glass. The reflection did it exactly 1 second too early. I gasped, heart racing. My eyes widened as I realized the person in the mirror was doing everything I did, but a heartbeat behind. This shouldn't be possible. I took a slow step back, narrating to my camera. It's just a trick of the light, I said quietly, more to convince myself than the viewers. I looked again. My reflected self sat down on an armchair behind me, an armchair I hadn't actually moved to. My pulse pounded as I dared another glance. There was a me sitting down, as if tired. I cleared my throat and said softly, "Hello? Who are you?" Only silence answered. But I knew it was me. The image reached out a hand, pressing it gently against the glass from the inside. My mirror self's eyes were slightly damp. It looked almost human in its sorrow. The silence was thick. I forced a calm tone, edging closer to the mirror. "Are you trapped here?" I whispered. The figure tilted its head and blinked, and I matched the blink. "Stay still," I told the reflection. I stepped forward, then snapped my fingers. In unison, the reflection did the same. My voice lowered. "Please, I mean no harm." I slowly raised a palm to the glass. The reflection mirrored me exactly, pressing its palm against mine. Suddenly, I felt something warm spread through my chest, a strange calmness. I realized this was a version of me, stuck in the mirror. My heart pinched with empathy. "It's like you're here and not here at the same time," I said softly into the camera. The reflection nodded once, just once, and then its hand slid down the glass. Its face lost that haunting look. I cleared my throat and gave a small, sincere smile to the lens. "I wish I could help," I said to it quietly. Then, suddenly, the temperature in the shop warmed. The glass shimmered for a moment, and the mirror cracked a single, clean line down the center. The figure vanished. I blinked, and in the actual mirror, there was nothing but the old me again. No more reflection extra. It was silent, still as if nothing ever happened. My heart was racing and my mouth dry. In a calmer tone, I addressed the camera. "I think this mirror was connected to another world or something. But I have to share this." I ended the video gently, thanking viewers and mentioning, as always, sharing and subscribing helps me reach 1,000 subs. I turned off the camera and left the mirror behind. Something about that cracked surface told me to leave this story where it was. The light in the old lighthouse went out at midnight, even though I knew it was on electric power. I promised myself one more compelling story to push me to 1,000 subscribers, so I drove to the abandoned North Point lighthouse. On camera, I introduced myself softly as the sun set behind waves. "I'm filming this tonight at North Point. People say the old keeper still walks these halls." My footsteps echoed in the curving stairwell as I climbed with camera in hand. The lighthouse's paint was peeling, and the air smelled of salt and dust. I spoke slowly into the camera about the legend, the keeper who vanished one stormy night. With every step, I told myself I needed this to be a great story. The circular stairs ended on a platform with the old lantern room above. A giant lens stared out to sea. I shined my light around the room, showing rusted gears and a faded sign that read, "Guard the light." Everything was silent except distant waves. I placed my camera on a tripod facing the lens, saying, "This was electric powered, but they say at midnight it goes dark on its own. Let's see." Midnight was still an hour away. I spent that time telling background to the camera. My voice echoed gently, matching the calm room. I was trying to stay calm, though adrenaline began to trickle in. When the clock struck midnight, I noted it with a polite nod. "It's midnight now," I whispered. The lighthouse light was still on. I waited. 15 seconds later, the glass lens glinted and then went black. The electric hum died out. In the total quiet darkness, I felt a presence behind me. I dared not breathe. My hands slowly raised the flashlight to illuminate the interior, still nothing. I spoke in a calm but firm whisper, "Something's here with me." The camera captured me as I slowly turned around. There, at the other end of the lantern room, was a shadowed figure of a man in an old cap and coat. He was hunched over, looking at the floor. I recognized the uniform, the old keeper's. His face was turned toward the wall. My pulse quickened, But I continued narrating softly, "The keeper, he's here." It sounded surreal, but it was as if I was narrating someone else's memory. "I hope you won't mind me being here," I whispered, voice steady. The ghostly keeper did not reply. He turned slowly. His eyes were glassy and empty. For a moment they locked with mine. I felt a sadness as deep as the ocean behind those eyes. The lantern suddenly flickered on by itself, then stayed lit. The keeper nodded once, almost respectfully, and began to move toward the ladder. "Up the stairs again?" I asked softly. He floated upward into the passage, still ascending to the very top of the lighthouse. I followed, filming silently. At the very top, he stopped and looked out at the sea, then slowly turned to me. Without warning, he raised a hand and pointed at the sky. Far away, I saw what looked like a storm cloud gathering, although the night was clear. It spilled light as if lightning was waiting to strike. Then the ghost simply vanished. I felt goosebumps, but the warmth of relief behind them. I ended the recording gently, stepping down the stairs. I whispered to the camera, "He just wanted to keep his post, I think." The light's still on. Outside, as I drove away with dawn creeping in, I spoke softly to the lens. "This story means a lot, so remember to share if you want more. One day, we'll hit that 1,000 subscriber goal together." The lighthouse is being turned back off on its own as I rounded the cape. In that moment, I imagined the keeper watching over me as I left. That first echo in the water sounded eerily like a call for help. I had set my camera up on the rocky shore of Lake Merrifield just as the sun was setting. If I capture anything on tape tonight, it might be the story to finally get me to 1,000 subscribers, I said quietly, voice mixing excitement and nervousness. The lake's surface was calm, reflecting the purple sky. I submerged a waterproof microphone beneath the surface, hoping to record any underwater sounds. Minutes passed quietly, until, "Ma-Ree?" The speakers crackled. It sounded like someone calling my name under the water. My heart skipped. I whispered into the mic, "Did you hear that?" The lake was quiet again, only the gentle lapping of waves against rocks. I replayed the recording, definitely a voice. I told my viewers, voice calm but curious, I'm not alone, I think. Taking a slow step closer, I put my hand in the chilly water. Instantly, ripples spread across the glassy surface, but I saw nothing breaking the water. I told myself it could be the wind, but another whisper bubbled up, "Ma-Kay." It was calling for Markay, the name of a woman who disappeared by this lake years ago. A chill ran down my spine. I scanned the shoreline in the dim light. There, on a nearby rock, sat a weathered rowboat. It was chained and old, but the oars inside glistened with fresh water. I felt a mix of curiosity and dread. "Let's see," I said softly, climbing in. The boat didn't move on its own, so I rowed gently, guided by moonlight. The lake was silent now, but I kept the microphone running, my breathing steady. Halfway across, the water before me stirred on its own. Ripples morphed into a shape, a woman's face beneath the waves. Her eyes were sad, and her lips mouthed something incomprehensible. My heart drummed, but I kept breathing deeply. I said into the mic, "Markay? Is it you?" The water calmed. Then her voice, gentle as a breeze, echoed, "Find the locket." My hands tightened on the oars as I stammered, "What locket?" The water turned wavy and then broke open. A small silver locket floated to the surface between us. It was engraved with an anchor and a name. I reached for it and felt the sudden weight of the air. The night suddenly felt colder. By the time I reached shore, the lake was still again, as if nothing had happened. I sat on the rocks dripping wet, locket in hand, the camera capturing my shaky breath. "I think Markay's story is more than a ghost tale," I whispered, voice hushed. I ended the recording, apologizing to viewers for the sudden end, and told them that sometimes helping a spirit find peace might just be worth more than a subscriber count. Please share this video to help me reach 1,000 subscribers. "I think I have a follow-up on that story coming," I said softly. I put the locket around my neck before I left. Upstairs in my dry studio, I opened it. Inside was a photo of Marque and a man smiling under a lighthouse. My heart ached. Maybe she had finally found a message through me. Now, helping her find closure could be the key to peace, both for her and, oddly enough, for reaching my milestone. I wished for subscribers at the old well, and something answered. I joked about it half seriously on camera. If only I could get to 1,000 subscribers with one wish. Tonight, I stood at the edge of an old stone wishing well on the outskirts of town. Moonlight glittered on the mossy walls. I tossed a coin in quietly and said my wish. The silence after my coin's splash was absolute. Just then, I heard a faint splash again. Turning to the camera with a nervous laugh, I said, "That was just me." But hey, you never know. I shined my flashlight over the well's edge. The water was still. For a moment, I felt silly. Maybe it really was just my imagination. Then, a soft voice echoed from the depth. It sounded like a small child singing. The song was old, like a lullaby my grandmother used to hum. I approached the edge, leaning over. In the dark water I saw a face, slender, translucent, a little girl with sad eyes. My breath caught. She whispered, "Make your wish, Mother." My hands trembled as I lowered the camera slightly. I steadied my voice. "Mark, is that you?" I barely remembered my wish. The figure's watery hair drifted. She lifted her head and looked at me kindly. I understood with a jolt. This was a child who once fell into the well. "You must be," I began, but she nodded softly. The air around me felt cool and kind. "I just wanted a friend," the voice murmured. The lake water rippled and a golden locket surfaced in front of me, drifting up on a stone. I recognized the design. It was the same as the necklace I'd found as a child, engraved with an initial M. When I was young, my mother often told me I should have wished for something kind. I picked up the locket. The child's figure smiled sadly. "Remember kindness," she whispered. Shaken but composed, I moved back and faced the camera again. I said with a gentle smile, "Well, I may not have 1,000 subscribers yet, but I think I made a wish that was needed more." I closed the recording, thanked my audience softly, and reminded them to subscribe if they liked what they heard. When I left the well, the echo of her lullaby accompanied me. On the drive home, I realized some stories teach you more about yourself than about your channel. My train's final stop was listed as nowhere, but when I looked out the window, there was nothing. I climbed aboard the almost empty midnight train and addressed the camera quietly. "I've been close to 1,000 subscribers for a while. Tonight, I'll try something different, ride this old line that's rumored to pass through ghost towns." The train seats were worn, and the air smelled of old leather and engine oil. Outside, the countryside was inky dark. Occasionally the train lights would reveal an abandoned station, one named Marrow Creek, another Larkspur Hollow. My audience's quiet company gave me courage. As the train rumbled on, I narrated softly about the history. Once it was said to carry townsfolk far away, but after a tragic accident decades ago, no one went near these tracks at night. I said, "We're on the last car, might as well try to capture anything." I kept the camera recording my calm reflection in the window. A dim light flickered in the next car behind me, but when I got up to check, no one was there. The corridor was empty, silent. I murmured to the camera, maybe just an old signal light. An hour later, the train slowed, creaking. The conductor's voice crackled on the intercom, "Final stop, nowhere." A chill ran through me. I stepped toward the door. When it hissed open, I found myself in a ghostly station. The sign indeed read nowhere. The platform was empty, but I spotted an old wooden luggage cart with a single vintage suitcase on it. The pale moonlight made everything else vanish into darkness. I clicked on my flashlight app on the camera and stepped onto the platform. The suitcase had the initials EM carved into it. I called softly, "Hello?" The only response was my own echo. "This town, it used to be real, didn't it?" I asked the darkness. Then, an old newspaper fluttered out from the suitcase onto the floor. I picked it up. The date was November 2nd, 1923. The headline read, "Larkspur Express derails, all lost." Beneath it was a photo of a woman whose eyes looked exactly like mine. The photo said, "Eliza Marks, station attendant." My skin went cold. I realized then that Eliza Marks was my great-grandmother. The final message in that paper said, "All aboard who wish to move on must leave no regrets." I looked up. The darkness moved in the shape of a figure, a woman with sorrowful eyes. My heart ached. With a steadiness I barely felt, I whispered, "Grandma." She nodded slowly. Then she pointed to the suitcase. I opened it. Inside was an old diary. Carefully, I read her last words. "I am ready to finally go to sleep. Please tell my family I love them." I felt a warm breeze on my cheek. Though alone, I knew she was thanking me. As I closed the suitcase, the train's lights returned and the door whooshed shut behind me. I sat back down on the train, breathless. The camera was still recording. "I think I just helped someone find peace," I whispered. I ended the video softly, saying, "This story got me closer to something more important than subscribers. Thank you for being here, and subscribing does bring me closer to 1,000, but maybe we chase good stories, not just numbers." The walls had teeth. I could swear I heard them chewing every night. I hoped this next story would finally push me to 1,000 subscribers. I stepped into the old Victorian house I'd rented for a week of investigation. To my viewers I said, "Tonight I'm live from the House of Whispers." The foyer was dim, lit by the flicker of a single lantern I brought. The wallpaper was faded, peeling in places, and it felt like the walls were closing in on me. I described everything calmly to the camera as I set it up on the mantel. Every night on the clock, exactly at 2:22 a.m., the whispering would start. On the first night I listened, it wasn't words, just a murmur rolling through the walls like a low surf. The second night it got louder, almost as if multiple voices were tangled together. I spoke softly into the camera, reassuring myself, "It's just the wind in the walls." But when I put my ear against the cold plaster, I heard it very clearly say, "Hello." My pulse quickened. The next morning, I asked the elderly caretaker about the house's history. She looked uneasy and said, "I can't imagine why anyone calls it House of Whispers." She tapped a finger to her temple and whispered, "The walls here, they remember." Late that night, I placed dictaphones around the room. When 2:22 a.m. came again, the voices filled the house. They said fragments, "Miss. Help, never, going home." I held the camera to my face and remained calm. On video I whispered, "I hear you." Suddenly, amid the noise, one clear voice emerged, sobbing. I got out of bed and followed the voice down a hallway to a locked study door. My heart raced, but I unlatched it. Inside was an old rocking chair moving back and forth. The camera's night vision showed it empty. The whispering continued. "She took me, Mom." I recognized the voice. It was a young girl's. A cold draft passed my face. The chair stopped moving. For a moment there was silence. The voice called softly, "Find her." I spent the next day searching the house. In the cellar, I found an old trunk. Inside was a child's dress and a small diary. In the diary it was written that the little girl had hidden from her cruel mother during a party and fell, never to leave the cellar. The voice had led me right there. Tears burned in my eyes. I held up the camera, voice gentle. "I think she wants her mother found," I said. I took the dress and diary upstairs. That night at 2:22 a.m., I held the dress on the bed and spoke softly to the room. "She's safe now." The walls fell silent. In the morning, I called the caretaker. Together we did a quiet ceremony for the child. I filmed the last moments as I gently said, "We found you, and you can rest." The atmosphere in the house lifted. I ended the story on camera, voice calm but warm. Thanks for watching and coming closer to our 1,000 subscriber goal. You helped me bring someone peace tonight. I panned the camera out to the hallway where the morning sun now glinted off the walls. They no longer seemed to watch or whisper. The house finally felt empty in a good way.